Lucia Corso here, voice teacher. 7th episode of this series on voice. Today it is on fascia. Fascia is on the rage since many years now. Some of you probably have worked with some osteopaths, and osteopaths are those working on fascia since long time. And finally it has got at the center of medical research for many reasons, and also because simply knowledge goes on and we put more ingredients everywhere, not only in this series. So, fascia. 2015, 4th International Fascia Research Congress, Carla Stecco, MD, presented a new medical definition of fascia. Fascia, she declared, is a sheet or any number of other dissectible aggregations of connective tissue that forms beneath the skin to attach, enclose and separate muscles and other internal organs. This for many has been a reduced version and definition of the thing. And the author of this book, that you have as usual there, great book, Les Jacques Fascia, for him it is the definition of Sir Lipe and Thomas Findlay. Fascia is the soft tissue component of the connective tissue system that permeates the human body, forming a whole body continuous three-dimensional matrix of structural supports. Others says, here we are, that fascia creates different interdependent layers with several depths from the skin to the periosteum, forming a three-dimensional mechano-metabolic structure. Some relates to fascia as the matrix of the body, making the body one and whole, even if it is composed by parts. Some others says that it is the soft tissue skeleton of the body. Some other go so far to put into, and I will bring some pages on that because it is interesting to take into account, that we have a liquid fascia and a solid fascia, and the liquid fascia being the blood and the lymphatic system, so the blood system with all the vessels and the lymphatic systems, and others say no, it's just the layer of connective tissue separating and covering all those vessels and the lymphatic system. Some others says that all the bones are also fascia because they define it with an histological and embryological origin. Everything that comes from connective tissue, even specialized, is fascia, and so we arrive until the ligaments, the tendons, aponeurosis, the bones even. So it is quite controversial, it's quite ample, and it is quite complicated to navigate into. For us it's important because it gives us some measure of what we found into training, what we found into development, what we found into logic of development and training that were not taken into account previously, and can explain many of the timing, adaptations, limitations we have, and constraint that we have to respect. The function of the fascia. Oh yeah, we are with some different. First, if I take my usual anatomical app, you see that if I take the body and I take away the connective tissue, you see that I just have the skeleton and the teeth. Then I put the connective tissue, and we have yet something that is absolutely fascia, and is absolutely also crucial for us. Those that you see in here are all ligaments. The ligaments are this part of connective tissue that, as you can see, brings together the skeleton. It protects the different part of the skeleton to have an elastic part for the movements, and really maintain together the shape of the skeleton. And this is one of these its proper functions, to maintain sustain and connect the body. Can be the skeleton, can be the organs, can be the muscles. We have what is called the deep fascia, that is the fascia more related to us and to the skeletal system, that is the fascia separating the muscles, meaning that the muscles are into those sorts of we have to start realize that the muscles go to the bones with the tendons, but they are separated one from the other by fascia. All those different parts that it makes. Inside we have the muscles. Also the organs are separated by fascia, and they are attached by ligaments to the skeleton system, again by fascia, so to be supported and so to be separated. New research has found that there are some nerves into the fascia, because one of the other great function, especially for us, of the information and the transmitting of proprioception, of the information of what? Of mechanic tension into the structure and the ligaments and the tendons and the muscles, and the position of the joints, of the body, and of those stretches. Of what it is done, fascia? It is composed by what? Connective tissue. Connective tissue can have the form of a specialized connective tissue, can be more loosened up, can be more dense, as in the ligaments. The ligaments, they give those information to the brain, as I said in the skeletal muscle system episode 2 weeks ago, sorry, the number 5. And perhaps this new research, finding that there is some nerves into the fascia, can explain this information exchange. But what is important for us is not to stay really up to the research all the time, but simply that it's some years that we know that the ligaments are going to give the brain the information about how you are positioned and the tension that you have, so to automatically start countermeasures that you are not going to give directly as voluntary order, but the system is going to give to maintain the shape, to maintain the proper distribution of the tensions, because this is one other of the, not function, but of the, how can I say, of the effects of having a fascia that we find into a system. Very often you come to me, or I talk to you in a singing world, we don't think that the system is a system in which we have an action and a reaction. And it is many years that I say, no, we have the reaction, and sometimes you have to work on the reaction, because working on the reaction is basically like working on the action, but it's part of the action. And studying, we see that this reaction is not only banal, I'm going to say mechanical and biomechanical thing, but is also a brain reaction on the action that we are doing according to the action that we are doing. So it will be different, and it will be different, as Solomonov has stated, and many training practices stated, not only by the position, but also by the state of the ligaments in themselves. So if a ligament is perfectly functional, it will activate the co-activation of the reaction, that is the antagonist, and in all the chain we have another kind of reaction, when it is optimal. Very often we are not optimal. Can be because we are not trained, and so the strategies in training must adapt to the fact that we have to get to some tone, and not and the structure, an underused structure will not have the correct co-activations. But also, if a ligament is all the time stressed in certain positions, it will change, not only transitory, but with a more lasting effect, its characteristic of elasticity and its shape. So the ligament with a different and not optimal shape will give not correct information for a correct coactivation. It will give the information that it has, and it will be for example, too lax, meaning laxity, joint. And this, if we want to improve a movement, a load, a voice, it's not optimal. So the strategies that we are going to adapt, and we have in the time developed, they take into account what human beings that we find. So you will find in the Alexander technique, for example, that it states quite clearly, even more than I do, that you perceive to be correct when you're wrong. And I have the idea that it has to do with the ligaments and with the fascia. When your training is going correctly, what we know about fascia is that fascia reacts, is a very dynamic system. It reacts to loads, it reacts to works. How? In a beneficial way, if the load is what we call now functional and progressive, and into the range of motion that you have, and not going to the end of range of motion that you have. And when you use the progressive of the load, the progression of the load into the range of motion, but with functional strategies, you can get to gain the range of motion, meaning you are going to get the adaptations of the fascia, the tendons, the cartilages, the ligaments, the proper fascia surrounding the muscles that has a shape. And if you want more range of motion, you have to change this shape in the time. Because what happens is that when you don't use your body in the range of motion, the fascia is going to adapt accordingly. And it evolves in a not beneficial way. It becomes stiffer, it becomes especially less organized, and you find that in the book Lesson Deck. It becomes less active in its fibroblasts. The fibroblasts activated are the myofibroblasts. And what we know by training is that the timing of the training are absolutely biological, by those timing of adaptations. That it was Charlie Weingroff intends when he says that training can be a stressor to elicit an adaptation, and this adaptation of the soft tissue can take a long time, 2-3 years. When you say a voice, it is training how much time? David Jones in a seminar I followed with him said 3-5 years in his experience. We know that usually it's 3 years or 5 years depending, but to get to the transformation of the tone and to have the stamina on the voice, usually it's 3 years. And I start thinking that it has to do with the adaptation of the fascia and connective tissues. The liquid fascia is the part of the fascia that brings nourishment in the form of liquids, in the form of all the enzymes in the blood and in the lymphatic system as immune system, as the molecules and everything we need to repair damage and to bring away what has been damaged. There is into the proper fascia a great water part, even if it is not the liquid fascia, if it has a sense to define this fascia, but it will be science that will tell us in its evolution. So in some time they will study, it will be a little more clear what we will define fascia, or they will define in a different way in the future. yeah, the water part of the fascia is the one that is the able of making this fascia, deep fascia, on that is surrounding those layers surrounding the muscles, be smoothly able to move one on the other, to have the movements, because otherwise you damage. When the muscles are unused, and when the structure and the range of motion is unused, they don't have this capacity of good movement one on the other. And again, it is one of the reasons I've been developed the functional practices for training, and we say that form is very important, and we say that progressive load is very important, and we say that the speed of the exercises are important. As in voice, we say always don't go to the extreme of the voice, but get where your voice can properly function, and progressively augment the load. When I talked about the skeletal muscles, I talked about eccentric. Eccentric is the load on the muscle exceeding the capacity of shortening of the muscle, and so you have the muscle that while contracting is going to elongate. This kind of work is the one that damages more the tissues, and if wisely used, is this then can bring to true adaptation that are not just the practices and the training we do for singing, but are those in which we can gain back functionality, stamina, range of motion, function that we have lost for some time, and longevity injury prevention. And this because it is the one in which mostly we work on damaging the tissues, so activating the repair system. The studies are now on, they are absolutely promising. The damaging is also what, if badly done, we call trauma. One of the things of fascia that is pretty important is that it reacts and it evolves, not only from a mechanical point of view, but also from a metabolic point of view. We have some studies about the fact that high insulin is not beneficial for cartilages. We have, we know quite well that if you have an autoimmune disease, you are going to have a fascia it's not beneficial for the fascia. We have another kind of fascia that is the visceral fascia. The visceral fascia is important for us. It is still, again, the layer of the connective tissue separating and supporting the organs. In the last episode, and the previous episode, the 6th on the central nervous system, what was central is that we learned that larynx muscles, intrinsic, and some pharynx muscles are activated and controlled by the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, it has this efferent function, that is the motor function of the nerves. It has also the efferent function for a parasympathetic system, and it has the afferent function of the organs of the body, till the colon, a part of the colon. So the afferent part of the vagus nerve, it's the 80% of the function of vagus nerve, so it is the biggest part of the vagus nerve function. And visceral fascia pertains all this system for which the vagus nerve is an afferent. So when we want to sing, we have to navigate those major afferent, meaning information, quantity that the vagus system, that the vagus nerve is going to give us, and to focus, to take into account those informations as just observation, to be able to use the efferent part of the vagus system to activate our proper muscles. Also, this activation is going to have an effect on the parasympathetic system. This parasympathetic system is going to affect metabolically, again, the smooth muscles. And some say that visceral fascia is also the smooth muscles. Again, with the definition a little larger. But what is interesting for us is that by singing we are going to change the metabolic environment, and at the same time we are going to have to do with all the information of visceral fascia arriving directly into our brain by this 10th cranial nerve, and we have to manage this information mostly by observation and listening about it, being part of the system, so that we can focus and activate the efferent part into the proper muscles of our larynx. Another recap of the episode.